adult Sunday school leaders, we are now in a new unit. We're in a new month. We're in a new quarter. And so for the next 6 weeks, you are going to be teaching your adult students about Unvarnished, life's greatest story. Now, if your students pay attention at the end of these 6 weeks of study, they'll be able to walk through a fairly simple gospel presentation. You don't have to tell them that on the front end, but at the end you might clue them in and walk them back through that. Now, here's what's going to be happening at our church, at First Baptist Church in Whitehall, Arkansas. On the third Sunday of September, that'd be September the 18th, Darrell Ray, who is on our church health team at the Arkansas Baptist State Convention, he'll be down at our church. He'll be preaching in both morning services, but also during the Sunday school hour, he will be leading adults. He'll be teaching adults about sharing the light, how this all fits together. Now, so we won't have a lesson per se, adults, on that Sunday, but here's what I'm going to try to do. For my prep talk that week, I'm going to try to not do what I do here and actually teach the lesson. I'll put that out on YouTube like I do. I'll advertise it through our church Facebook and all that. So if students, your adult students, want to watch a Sunday school lesson, they can. Now remember, they do get what they pay for since this is free. All right, so that's what's going to be happening here at our church on Sunday, September the 18th. Now, let's look at this week's topic, One Great Creator. It's out of Psalm 33 and Colossians 1, and the point is that God created us, and He knows each of us. Psalm 33 is a psalm of praise. It's praising God as the Creator. And of course this is Old Testament, and so you see when it says Lord, and the Lord is all caps, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. When you see the L-O-R-D in all caps in the Old Testament, that's God's name, Yahweh. And so it's a long story about how that came about, but anyway, just take my word for it that's God's name. And so you might, I probably tell my students that once every 2 or 3 months, just to make sure that they know that. Let me just tell you this, don't be afraid to repeat yourself as you teach, because not everybody's there the same week, and so week after week, and so you might tell a little nugget of truth, and then 4 or 5 weeks later you might tell that same nugget. For one thing, if they have been there, maybe that will reinforce, that'll cement in their brains what you're trying to teach them. And then if they haven't been there, then maybe they're learning something new. All right, so let's look at this. So we're looking at Psalm 33. Let's just ask some very basic questions here. What did God create? We look at our text here, we see He created everything, the stars, the earth, everything. Created it all. How did He do it? He spoke it into existence. That's all it took, just the speaking of it, and it came into being. Now, through whom did God create everything? I'm not sure what I'm asking there, are you? Well, I'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes. Now, do you realize there's an intricate balance of the chemical composition of the Earth and its atmosphere, the distance we are from the sun, the tilt of the Earth's axis? All these things work together to ensure that there is life on planet Earth. Now, many of you may know or may not know the name Rob Bell. Now, I know Rob Bell has come under fire in recent years for his stance on some theology. And let me just say that I can read somebody and kind of discern what's true and what's not. And he has written some stuff that is absolutely spectacular, in addition to some of the things that are, I think, almost borderline, if not heresy. So, you got to pick and choose here. And so you may not even want to mention Rob Bell's name, but here's something to think about. He did a presentation years ago called Everything is Spiritual. And if you go out on YouTube, you can Google that, or you can search for it on YouTube and look for Everything is Spiritual, Rob Bell. I think there's a newer one in 2016. I'm used to the other one that's about 5 years old, maybe 2010, 2011. And the one I'm used to is about an hour, 18 minutes long. Now, somebody has pared down the part that I want to reference, and it's about 5 minutes long. And I'm going to put the URL down here at the bottom. It's called tinyurl.com/Rob Bell Earth, with the first letter of each of those names capitalized, Rob Bell Earth. And that he gives an excellent illustration of how just all these little things are just dialed just right in order for life to be sustained on planet Earth. So take a look at that. If you don't want to show it in class, that's great. You might want to take and just use some of the examples that he had just to show that the thought that Earth and life just came into existence by accident is just pure nonsense. It just doesn't make sense. So anyway, that's a good way, I think, of explaining that. Now, back to Psalm 33. Of course, we worship and admire God who is so grand that created all of these things. But we see down in chapter 33, verses 13 through 15, that not only is he grand, not only is he great and mighty and holy and all those things, he's also concerned about people. He gazes, he looks upon, he looks down on, he looks out on the inhabitants of the earth. He looks on people. So yes, God is mighty, he's far above us, but he's not distant. He's holy, he's far above us, but he's not distant. I think that's a great phrase to share with your class. He cares for people as individuals. Now we get over to the New Testament reading in our lesson this week, and it's out of Colossians chapter 1. We look at verses 15 through 17 there. We see in verse 16 it says that everything was created by him. Well, wait, everything was created by Jesus? Wait a minute, I thought Genesis and even our psalm here talks about God creating everything. Let me read you some other New Testament passages. Let's look at John chapter 1, verses 3. John chapter 1, verse 3 says, "Through him," we're talking about Jesus, or the Word actually is what it talks about here, but of course we know that's Jesus as we look on down further in John 1. Verse 3, "Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." He made everything. Wow. Okay. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 6. It says, "Yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came, and for whom we live." Good. "And there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came, and through whom we live." So all things came about through Jesus. That's interesting. How about Hebrews chapter 1 in verse 2? Hebrews chapter 1 verse 2 says, "But in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe." So you see, God the Father is the creator, and he created through Jesus, God the Son. Now we get down to the end of verse 16, and we see that everything was created by him and for him, talking about Jesus. Verse 17, "He holds all things together." Jesus sustains his creation. So God knows you. He knows you intimately. He knows you better than you know yourself. In Luke chapter 12, verse 7, it tells us that God knows the number of hairs on our head. He sees the external. But not only that, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7 says, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Meaning he knows our intentions. He knows our desires. He knows our thoughts. He knows our heart. He knows our ambitions. He knows those internal things. So not only did God create us through Jesus and for Jesus, he knows us intimately, and he has a purpose for us. He knows us, he loves us, he has a purpose for us, and that's what we will be looking at in week 2 of this unit, is God's great purpose for us. Don't forget to pray for your class. Have a good week.